Before we get started, I wanted to show you that this is the original motif that I'm going to be showing you how to make today. We will be making two of these to make the pocket, and then you will join them together after you make the second one. It is worked from the bottom up in the row. So for this project, you are going to need a worsted weight cotton yarn. This is what I will be using. If you use the same material, you are going to need at least 2 skeins. You're going to need 1 skein to make the motif and then at least 1 skein to make the fringe. You are also going to need a wooden ring, or you could probably use a metal ring, but it will stay on better if you use a wooden ring. This one I got off of Amazon, and this is a 12-inch ring or 30 centimeters. If you see this wooden ring in particular is flat, it doesn't really matter, but again, I think it just stays on better when you get this particular ring. I will link it in the description box below. You're also going to need a 5mm hook or size H. So the finished motif before you add the border is going to be about 11.5 inches, which is important since our ring is only 12 inches, or a little under 30 centimeters. It's also about 6.5 inches, or about 17 centimeters. To begin, you will need to chain 4. In the 4th chain from your hook, we are going to make 2 double crochet, this will count as 3 doubles, chain 3, and do 3 more doubles. This is what your piece should look like. This is the bottom of our triangle. You should have 3 doubles, a chain 3 space, and 3 more doubles. Now for row 2, you are going to chain 4. This will count as a double crochet and a chain 1 space. Turn your work and make 1 more double crochet in that same stitch. Chain 6. Skip to the very last stitch of the row. Make a double crochet, a chain 1, and another double crochet in that same stitch. This is what your piece should look like. This is what I'm going to refer to as a V-stitch. It's a double crochet, a chain 1 space, and a double. Then a chain 6 space and another V-stitch. We're going to move on to row 3, chain 3. This beginning chain 3 will count as 1 double crochet. In our chain 1 space of our V-stitch below, we are going to make 2 more double crochet, a chain 3 space, and 3 more double crochet in that same space. This is what it should look like. 3 doubles, 3 chains, and 3 more doubles. I'm going to refer to this as a cluster V-stitch. Now if you look closely, we are going to be working in the chain 3 space below to make this into more of a triangular shape. So going around the chain 6 space there, drop down into that chain 3 space below and make a half double crochet. As you can see, it drew it together. Now we're going to skip over to our other V-stitch, and we are going to work into the chain 1 space and make another cluster V-stitch. A cluster V-stitch is 3 double crochet, a chain 3 space, and 3 more double crochet in the same space. So this is what your piece should look like. You should have a cluster V-stitch, a half double crochet down 2 rows below, and another cluster V-stitch. Now we are going to move to the next row, chain 4. Again, this beginning chain 4 will count as a double crochet in a chain 1. Make a double crochet in the same space. That's our V-stitch right there, a double, a chain 1, and a double. Now we are going to chain 6. We're going to skip over the cluster V-stitch below and make another V-stitch in the half double crochet that we made in our previous row. That is a double crochet, a chain 1, and another double crochet. Chain 6, and make one more V-stitch in the very last stitch of the row. This is what your piece should look like. A V-stitch, a chain 6, a V-stitch in the half double below, a chain 6, and another V-stitch in the very last stitch. Chain 3. Turn your work. In the chain 1 space below, we are going to work 2 more double crochet. That counts as 3 doubles, chain 3, and make 3 more double crochet in the same space. Again, this is a cluster V-stitch. Now we are going to work into the chain 3 space of our cluster V-stitch 2 rows below. Going around the chain 6 space, make a half double crochet down into that chain 3 space. Now skip over to the next V-stitch, and in that chain 1 space, we are going to make another cluster V-stitch. That's 3 doubles, a chain 3 space, and 3 more doubles. Now we are going to half double crochet down 2 rows below into our chain 3 space of our cluster V-stitch. Skip over to our very last V-stitch, and in the chain 1 space, make another cluster V-stitch. This is what your piece should look like. You should have a cluster V-stitch, a half double crochet, another cluster V-stitch, a half double crochet, and another cluster V-stitch. Chain 4 and turn. Double crochet into the same stitch. You just made a V-stitch. Chain 6. Skip over and make another V-stitch in the half double crochet. Chain 6. Skip the next cluster V-stitch, make another V-stitch down in the half double below. Chain 6. In the very last stitch of the row, make one more V-stitch. By now you should see a pattern forming. Every other row will be a V-stitch row, which is a V-stitch, chain 6, V-stitch, chain 6, V-stitch. In the next row, you'll be doing cluster V-stitches. And you are just going to continue repeating these last 2 rows in the concept for a total of 9 rows. So just continue repeating these last 2 rows. When you finish your last cluster row, I will meet you back here. So here I've completed 9 rows. You should have ended on a cluster V-stitch row, and we are going to do a couple of finishing rows. So chain 4 and turn. Double crochet in the same stitch. You have a V-stitch here. Now we are only going to chain 2. In the next chain 3 space, you're going to make a single crochet. Chain 2 more. Make a V-stitch in the half double crochet. So you should have a V-stitch, a chain 2, a single crochet, a chain 2, a V-stitch. We're just going to repeat that. Chain 2, single crochet in the next chain 3 space. Chain 2, V-stitch down into the half double below. So you're just going to repeat this all the way across until you reach the end, and I'll meet you back. Now when you get to the end here, don't forget to chain 2 and do your last V-stitch in the last stitch of the row. So this is what your piece should look like. Every V-stitch and single crochet should be separated by a chain 2 space. This is just to level it out. We weren't increasing that row. Now we're going to chain 1 and turn. Place 1 single crochet in the very first stitch and in the chain 1 space and in the next stitch, and 2 in the chain 2 space. So essentially we are going to put 1 single crochet for every chain stitch and every stitch across. So if it's a chain 2 space, you need to have 2 single crochet in it. And then if it's a chain 1 space, you need to have 1 single crochet in it. And then just put a single crochet in every stitch. So you're just going to repeat that all the way across, and I will meet you back when you have completed this row. So here I am at the end, and I wanted to show you that this is the double crochet, the chain one space, and don't forget to put a single crochet in that very last stitch of your V-stitch. It would be very easy to forget this stitch, and I wanted to make sure that you saw to do it. So this is what your piece should look like. Now we are going to make another row, chain one and turn. I'm going to put 1/2 double crochet in the very first stitch. Now you're going to chain one and skip the next stitch. Half double in the next stitch. Chain one, skip one, half double in the next stitch. Chain one, skip one, half double in the next stitch. You are just going to continue doing this all the way across, and I'll meet you at the end. So here I am at the end. Your last stitch should be a half double crochet. This is what your piece should look like. We're going to do one more row, chain one and turn. In your very first chain one space, you are going to make one single crochet, a chain three, and one more single crochet in the very same space. You're going to skip the next stitch and go to the chain one space, do a single crochet, a chain three, and another single crochet in the same chain one space. So you're just going to continue doing that all the way across. In every chain one space, you're going to put one single crochet, a chain three, and another single crochet in the same chain space. You're going to skip all the half double crochet. Here we are at the end, and I'm just going to slip stitch into the last stitch, and we are done with one motif. Now you are going to need to make another one. Once you have two made, you're going to need to join them to make the little pocket. So you want to make sure that the right side of your motif is facing outward, and you're going to put the wrong sides together. You need to line them up, and again, don't fasten off on your second motif because we're just going to join them right after. So now we're going to work along this first edge here. So chain one, make sure that you've got the last two rows lined up here, and we're going to go through both layers. Make sure that you are joining the correct rows here. We're going to make a single crochet through each of the first three rows. Now you should be to your first V-stitch row. Line up both of those double crochet there, and going around both posts, you're going to make 3 single crochet. Now make sure that your next 2 double crochet are lined up for the next row, and you're going to put 3 single crochet around the double crochet posts. At the next V-stitch, you're going to put 3 single crochet around the double crochet post. So you're just going to continue doing this all the way down till you reach the point of where we started. So here we are at the point down where we started, And going through our very first stitch, we are going to make one single crochet, a chain 2, and one more single crochet in the same space. This is going to make a point at the bottom. And now we are just going to continue working up the other side, going through both layers, following the same concept as the other side. So around every double crochet post, you should have 3 single crochet. And you're just going to continue doing that until you reach the top. So here we are at the end. This is what your piece should look like. It should have a little pocket. So we're going to fasten off and we're going to weave all these tails in. So just weave all these tails in and I'll meet you back. So now we are going to add our fringe. This was sort of a challenge to show you on camera. I used a huge piece of cardboard from a box, but essentially my box was 25 inches wide. So if you don't have one, you can make each strand like I'm showing you here. So essentially each strand should be 50 inches long because we're folding it in half. So you're going to want to flip your motif to where the wrong side is facing you. So this is the right side, so I'm going to flip it over. And in every stitch around, we are going to put one piece of fringe. I have learned the hard way that 2 pieces of fringe makes for extremely thick fringe. However, if you are going to leave it loose, if you do not plan to gather your fringe, then you need to put 2 strands per stitch. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to gather the fringe on this one. If I was not going to gather it, if I was just going to leave it hanging loose, I would put 2 strands per stitch. So here I'm showing you the lark's knot. This is how you would attach fringe to a blanket. So you're just going to continue doing this all the way around in every stitch around. Don't forget the chain 2 space at the bottom, and I will meet you back. So here I've put 1 strand of fringe for every stitch of my motif. And like I said, if you were going to leave it hanging loose, I would put 2 strands per stitch. But I'm going to gather it. Before I gather it, I'm going to show you how to attach it to your hoop. So cut 2 strands of yarn that are the same length as your fringe. So you want them to be 50 inches long each. The reason I use 2 strands is just because it's sturdier. So grab your yarn needle and put both strands on your yarn needle. And we are going to find the center stitch, and I'm using these cluster V stitches as a point of reference. So we know this is the middle cluster V stitch, so we're going to just start right here and going through our chain 1 spaces. We're going to weave these strands through our chain 1 spaces. Here at the end, I'm going to actually bring it through the motif itself. And the reason is I don't want it to be left on a chain 1 space here. I think it's sturdier when you go through the motif right here. So now I'm going to loop it around the wooden ring. So the motif itself is going to be behind the wooden ring. So I am going to lay the motif down and set my wooden ring on top. It doesn't really matter if you have it perfectly where you want it yet, because you're going to move it. Go around the wooden ring and into the back side of your motif. Again, I'm not going through the chain one space here. I'm going through the motif itself. And then you're just going to start weaving in and out of our chain one spaces again, all the way across the back side of the motif. Now here we are at the end, and I should have put it through the motif. I didn't do it there. I didn't notice I wasn't doing it. But I am going to go through the motif here. So I'm going around the wooden ring again, and then I'm just going to finish going through these chain one spaces until I reach the center again. Just get it about where you want it, and we are going to just tie these strands together. Now don't tie them too tight because you don't want to put too much stress on the wooden ring, and we are going to further reinforce the sides right here with another strand of yarn, so don't worry about making it too tight. Just make it tight enough to where it doesn't want to slide around. I'm going to double knot my strands right here. And as you can see, it's on there, but it's not perfect. So we're going to add some more yarn around the sides there to further reinforce our piece. So I didn't really measure this. I just used double strands, and we are going to go around the motif just below where we did our last row. And I'm just going to go through the motif and around the wooden ring several times to further reinforce our piece to the wooden ring. And then I'm just going to flip my piece over, and we are just going to tie these ends together so that they don't come apart. I'm going to knot it several times. And now I'm just going to weave those tails in. So you're just going to repeat doing that to the other side. So now I'm going to embellish this. You don't have to do this, but I wanted to add wooden beads to my tails right here where I tied it. This is not necessary, but I do think it makes it look cuter. And I just used two varying sizes. I don't really remember what size beads I used, but I'll look and see and put it in the description box below. Now I'm just going to knot off the bottom so they don't fall off. And now we are going to gather our fringe. I don't recommend doing this with your piece laying down on a table. Really and truly, you need to hang your piece up before you gather the fringe. I'm going to be wrapping this clear rubber band that I got from Walmart in the hair section around my tails here before I add a gathering knot. I think it just helps make it look nicer. So here I hung it up and gathered right below the wooden ring, and now I'm going to show you how to add a gathering knot to hide that rubber band there. So I cut a piece of yarn about the length of our fringe, so about 50 inches, double strands. And to make a gathering knot, you just need to make a loop like this, and then you're going to wrap around the top of it and around the loop there. You don't really have to wrap it a certain number of times, just wrap it until it's the thickness you want. Once you get it the thickness you want, you're going to take that tail through the loop you made and pull up on that opposite tail at the top. You want to be gentle because cotton yarn will snap right in half. And then just pull that knot underneath the area where you wrap so that it's hidden. And then you can cut both ends to the quick, and no one will know that they're even there. One last thing, I'm going to show you how I make a hanging loop. So I'm taking 3 strands of yarn. I just kind of guessed at what I wanted it to be. It doesn't really matter how long you make this. And the reason that I chose 3 strands of yarn is because I'm going to braid it. So take your 3 strands and fold them in half, and then using the lark's knot, we are going to attach those strands to the top of our wooden ring. And now I'm going to add a bead to the top. Again, I don't remember what size this is, but I will put it in the description box. And now I'm going to, like I said, braid the tails. Going to split it into 3 sections and gently braid it. You don't have to do this, I just think it adds a nice little extra touch. Once you get your braid the length that you want, just knot it upon itself so that the bead doesn't come flying off. And then I'm going to come up just a little bit higher and make another knot. And this is so that it can be hung up. Then you're just going to snip off the ends, and that's it. I do recommend taking a comb and brushing out the bottom, but otherwise you are done. Add some dried flowers or even fresh flowers in there and hang it up. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial today. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching.